It was Friday, and I left the hangar early. The guys had errands to run, and then they would probably leave since I wasn't there. I was looking forward to an evening with my beautiful wife, Zoe. We had known each other for almost 6 years and had been married for 3.5. We were both 29. Intimacy had been a little slow to develop, and for the last month or so, she had seemed a little distracted. So I did the best I could. A bottle or two of decent wine, a couple of ribeye steaks from the butcher shop, roses from a florist rather than the supermarket. I planned to light candles and hopefully find out what was wrong with her, show her my love for her, and hopefully go to bed early. I got home long before she did. I made sure the house was clean, fresh sheets on the bed and candles in the bedroom. I set the table in the kitchen, got the best cutlery and napkins. I opened a bottle of wine to give it some fresh air. I put roses on the table by the front door so she can see and smell them when she comes in. She loves the smell of roses. I cooked the potatoes for my signature potato scallops in the oven. Lightly spray the potato slices with olive oil, salt, pepper, and add a little rosemary. I used mustard powder to sprinkle very gently over the steaks. Everything was ready for her to show up. I was very pleased with what I had accomplished. All I had to do was wait for the love of my life to show up, and I would conquer her head to toe and show her how much I loved her. Hopefully it would last all weekend. I heard the front door open as I laid the potato slices out on the baking tray. The oven was heating up. I heard Zoe call out to me. "Richard, are you home?" Strange, I thought, because my car was parked in the driveway in front of the house, and the roses must have given it away. I was just finishing sprinkling the scallops with rosemary when I heard her say, "Okay, we got here first. We can sit on the couch when he comes in. It will look better if we sit and he stands. He won't be scared when we tell him." "Tell me what?" I asked, as I walked into the living room where I was greeted by a shocked Zoe and some other man. At a glance, I realized who the man was. Zoe had been talking about him for the past 2 months. He was the new deputy head of human resources, just over 180 centimeters tall, trim, blonde, handsome, and arrogant. I must have gotten a confused look on my face. He wasn't serious and just extended his hand. "Hi, Dick. I'm Gerald." In a daze, I took his hand. He had a firm grip, a very firm grip. He stopped just before he crushed my hand. "Asshole." I just stood there. He smiled at me. Zoe spoke. "Richard, there's something we have to tell you. Will he be extra for dinner? I could defrost an extra steak and Gerald would eat it." She continued, "I'll spend the weekend with Gerald. It'll just be one weekend. I didn't see that coming." "What?" "No." Gerald stepped forward. "It's going to be so good for you. I'll teach her things you can only dream of. You'll be so much better off with her. It'll only last one weekend and she'll never do it again." "No. Never." I was starting to come to my senses. "If she does that, I'll divorce her." Gerald walked right up to me, looked down on me, and said in a threatening voice, "No, you won't do that. You won't be able to stop me." Continuing in the same threatening tone, he said, "No, I can't stop you, but I promise you will have trouble walking the very day you file for divorce in court. From that day forward, your life will be full of pain. The choice is yours." He stood next to Zoe and smiled at me, continuing to speak in a normal voice. "She will spend the weekend with me, and I will teach her many things. She will come back to you, and I will never sleep with her again. She will stay faithful to you after this weekend." He looked at Zoe. "You will, won't you, baby?" "What the hell, calling her babe?" I was stunned and had no idea what to do. "You two have already slept together?" I accused them. I figured it was because he was calling her babe. "No, we hadn't hooked up. That would be cheating," Zoe exclaimed. "And it's not? I need a drink." "I'll get you a beer," Zoe offered. I growled at her. "I think I can at least do that myself." Gerald put his hand on her shoulder. "Leave him alone for a minute, babe. He's going to need time to figure this out. We've been talking about this for weeks, and we just dumped it on him in a matter of minutes. He needs time to realize it's inevitable. He'll go along with it. They always do. Apparently, he's done it before." I rushed into the kitchen. I got the feeling that Zoe wanted to follow me, but he held her back. It was probably a good idea on his part at that point, and why the fuck was he calling her baby? That pissed me the hell off. That asshole. When I got to the kitchen, I saw an open bottle of wine. I poured a glass and took a big gulp. No, wine was not the right drink for such an occasion. I rushed into the garage where my beer cooler stood. I nearly ripped the door off its hinges as I opened it and grabbed a bottle of crafty old hen. I slammed the refrigerator door shut. What a pair of fucking assholes, I thought to myself. I looked around for the bottle opener. I couldn't find one. It should have been in the kitchen. Shit. I didn't want to go back into the house until I got my thoughts in order. I used the alternative methods we used in the army. I put the edge of the cork on a sharp splinter of the workbench and hit it hard on top. It worked then and it works now. The cork flew off into the corner. I didn't pay any attention to it. I'm sure a lot of Land Rovers have big chunks of metal sticking out of the trunk. How am I supposed to deal with that? I slowly calmed down and pondered for a few minutes, and then I had a plan. I walked to the other end of the garage, opened a cabinet, took what I needed, and stuffed it into the back pocket of my pants. I took a big gulp and finished the beer, then took another and went back into the kitchen. This time I opened the beer properly with a bottle opener and prepared some more. I carefully stuck the largest knife from the knife set into the back of my pants along with another object. It was for show. I wasn't going to go to jail. I was confident in my plan. Yeah, that was it. I took a deep breath and walked back into the living room. The cheating assholes were sitting on my couch, holding hands. I looked over at them. They let go of each other's hands and moved away slightly. Okay, the power level had shifted slightly in my direction. It looked like they were waiting for me. I pulled out my phone and tossed it on the coffee table. It was pretty obvious that it was in recording mode. He stood up, saw that I was angry, and spread his hands apart. Listen, buddy, it's only going to be for one weekend. That annoyed me too. An asshole like him would never be a buddy. He looked at my phone. I think you're recording this. That's fine. But you know what happens if it gets on social media. The pain you'll feel won't be the same as if you had both legs broken. Do you understand? I want to record this for my defense and, oddly enough, for yours and hers, I told him. Don't think about sending this to work, since I am the deputy chief of staff and all complaints come to me. I have friends who let me know if someone is trying to get around me. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. You know what I mean? I do. I answered in a serious tone, looking up at him. I have a suggestion on how we can handle this, I said. He only smirked at me. Arrogant asshole. Nodding at the phone, I said, For the record, tell me what you're going to do with my wife. He puffed up like a peacock. I'm going to take your wife away for the weekend and give her a sexual experience like she's never had before. She'll learn new and exciting ways to pleasure each other. Then she'll come back to you much more prepared to pleasure you, he smirked. Probably not until next weekend at the earliest, because she'll be sore all over and probably won't be able to walk in a straight line. He chuckled. I didn't believe a word of that nonsense. And what happens after that? I asked. She comes home to you having had the best sexual experience of her life, but she promised me that she will remain faithful to you every day as long as she breathes. She will show you new skills and techniques that will drive you crazy. I looked at Zoe. Zoe, is this what you want? Yes, please, Richard. It will only be one weekend, and then I promise to be faithful to you. As I looked at Gerald, I asked, what if she doesn't keep her promises? Like she promised to be faithful to me at our wedding. What if she cheats on me? Will you come back and abuse her physically like you threatened to do to me? Or if some sex god shows up and promises her something even better? My voice was full of sarcasm, which was completely out of his head. He looked embarrassed. I guess he had never been asked such a question before. She promised me that she would stay faithful to you after this weekend. Yeah, like I believe everything she says now, that's it. I'll fight you for her. He was a few inches taller and broader than me in the shoulders and a little younger, but he only smiled. Damn arrogant asshole. If that's what you want, we can do it. I don't want to waste the weekend, so it has to happen here and now. I agree, I replied. Zoe pressed her palms to her mouth like she does when she's worried. Two men fighting over me is so exciting. A light flashed in her eyes. I looked up at her and growled. I'm not fighting for you. You're not worth it. I'm fighting for my self-respect. The sparkle in her eyes faded, and her face took on a serious expression. Looking at it, I said, "If I win, you walk away and never speak to her again, not even at work. If you win, you spend the weekend with her and I don't divorce her. But there are rules." He still had a smug look on his face. "Okay, let's hear them. Whoever falls on their back first loses. No knives, no weapons, and everything else is on. And whoever wins, no police." "Okay, no cops. Do you have any knives?" He smirked at me. At those words, I pulled a large 30-centimeter meat cleaver from the waistband of my pants and placed it on the coffee table. That made him open his eyes. "And I suppose you have a gun too?" he said, smirking. With a grin, I reached behind my back and pulled out an air pistol, an exact replica of a combat pistol. I don't know if he knows about guns, but that gun looked real, especially when I pulled it out. He wasn't so cocky now, but he didn't hide his cockiness. "I'm going to beat the shit out of you before I tip you over on your back." "Do your best, asshole. Just remember 3 rules. No knives, no guns, and no police, and the rest is fine." "I'm not stupid. I understand that, you little bastard. You're gonna pay for this. I may have to keep her all week. If you win, at least I'll respect myself for trying to protect my marriage. I won't be ashamed every time I look in the mirror." Suddenly, Zoe changed her mind. She recognized my demeanor and determination from the past. This might not go the way she had planned. "No, please stop. I changed my mind. Richard, don't do this, please. Gerald, leave now. I've changed my mind. I don't want to do this." She realized I liked the change in power level better. I growled at her. "It's too late, baby. You and him started this weeks ago, and I'm going to end it here and now, one way or another. Get out your phone and write this down. I need proof." She was crying. It was out of her hands now. I pointed to Gerald at the kitchen door. "After you." He walked through the kitchen and headed for the back door. I grabbed a few of my billets. As soon as he went out the back door, I kicked him with my heel and he flew face first into a flower bed. He jumped up and turned around, glaring angrily with his eyes. I just smiled at him and said, "No rules." Not quite right, but whatever. The point was this. He was furious. Good, that's what I was going for. The force level jumped even more in my direction. It would have been nice if he fell on his back, but I wasn't expecting that. He swung at me with his right. He might as well have called me and warned me that the blow was coming, so slow was it. I easily deflected the blow and then spat out the contents of my right palm, salt, pepper, rosemary, and mustard powder into his face. He covered his face with his hands and started screaming. I tried to push him down to land on his back, but he managed to take a step back. He lowered his arm and looked up at me through his tears. He had snot running down his nose. I just walked over and punched him in the stomach as hard as I could. He bent over, but he didn't fall. Now he had one hand on his stomach and the other on his face. I kicked him in the balls with my knee as hard as I could. He fell to his knees and began to vomit. He didn't have enough arms to hold on to anything that hurt. I tried to roll him over onto his back, but he resisted. Then I slapped him hard across the face. He wobbled on his knees, but still didn't fall on his back. My right fist hit his nose, and blood rushed in all directions. Damn, that must have hurt. They didn't show that on TV. I slapped him across the face with an open palm. His head snapped back, so I hit him with the back of my hand. It was a stupid move, and my hand hurt like hell. I leaned over to him and said quietly, "You can stop this from happening. All you have to do is lie on your back." I raised my hand again. His knees buckled and he fell to his side, then rolled onto his back. His strength level was at an all-time high. I looked at Zoe. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. I didn't know what she was crying about. I grabbed Gerald by the hair and jerked him to his feet. I wasn't being gentle. I opened the wicket gate to our garden and told him, "Remember, you will never speak to her again, you weakling. And if I get a visit from the police, a beating will seem mild in comparison." I put him outside the gate and closed it behind him. The smell's gone, too. He'd obviously shat himself. Zoe was still there, recording. "Send me a copy of this video on my phone." I walked past her into the kitchen and walked over to the sink and washed my hands. At least Gerald would smell nice with the rosemary I'd put in when cooking. I went upstairs and Zoe followed me. I grabbed my suitcase from the spare bedroom. I started pulling her underwear out of the drawer and putting it in the suitcase. What are you doing? You win and I'm yours. I looked at her as I continued to stow her clothes in the suitcase. We agreed that I wouldn't divorce you if I lost. As you just said, I won, so I can divorce you and Will. I suggest you go to your parents. I carried the suitcase down the stairs, opened the front door and threw it out. I picked up the phone and dialed her mother's number. Hi, Richard. This is a nice surprise. What can I do for you? Mary, would you be so kind as to come and get your daughter? I'm divorcing her. With those words, I hung up the phone. I sent her an audio tape of Gerald bragging about how he was going to screw her daughter all weekend. And she said that's exactly what she wanted. Then I turned off my phone. I took Zoe's hand and led her out the door, closing and locking it behind her. I paid no attention to the knocking, and after a while it stopped. I expected a visit from the police. They never came. Perhaps Gerald was too ashamed to admit that he had been beaten by a smaller man. It doesn't matter. I spent Saturday sorting through everything that belonged to Zoe and tallied up some sums. When my grandparents died, the house passed to my sister and me. I took out a small mortgage to pay for her half. I am sure I will have to reimburse Zoe for the amount she paid for the mortgage. I edited video and audio clips and sent them to every email address I could find at Zoe's workplace. Assholes like Gerald must have made enemies. I'm sure they'll make sure it gets to the head of HR. Sunday morning, Zoe's father stopped by to pick up the rest of her things. He looked at me and asked, "Is there any way in which you—" I think the look on my face told him the answer to the question he hadn't finished. We shook hands as he walked away. I suspect Zoe's parents were one of the reasons the divorce went so quietly. It's been a little over 4 months since I sent in my divorce petition. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in the garage cleaning my air guns. I had a shooting competition tomorrow. I heard the doorbell ring. I was about to get up when someone's voice called out to me. "It's okay. I'll get it." It was Clara, the woman who kept order in my house. Clara appeared at the garage door. "This is the lady who says she's your wife. She's 170 centimeters tall, blonde hair, about 30 years old, maybe a little more." I put the kettle on and left her in the living room. I made my way into the living room. It was Zoe. She looked nice. She was trying, but she had aged about 5 years. She didn't look good. It was the first time I'd seen her since I kicked her out. "What do you want? I'm paying you what we agreed on for the house." She looked at me. "Richard, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake." He convinced me, and he promised me everything would be fine. He told me that if you loved me, you would let me do this. He seemed so convincing. He asked one of the girls to tell me how she did it. "And this other girl, is she still married?" I knew the answer to that question. She wasn't sure. I don't work there anymore. After everyone got the video and audio, I was so embarrassed. No one wanted to talk to me. I had to leave. I have to ask, are you still seeing Gerald? No, I wasn't going to. He honored his deal and never spoke to me, but he wasn't there long. He didn't show up for work for a few days, and by then things had fallen apart and he'd been escorted out of the building. Rumor has it that another husband beat him up. It wasn't me. When I dragged him to the back gate, I warned him. The police didn't come to me, but I kept looking over my shoulder and stayed away from dark places. That's what he should do. He's not an honorable man. Decent men don't have other men's wives. Please, Richard, can we try again? I would never do something so stupid. Please, I do love you, and it was for your own good. But I'm sorry, honey, it was a mistake, and I shouldn't have done it, she pleaded with me. At that moment, Clara entered, carrying a tray with cups, saucers, teapot, milkman, and cookies. Placing the tray on the coffee table, she said, "You might want to let it infuse for a while." She disappeared back into the kitchen. Zoe followed her with a glance. "Or have you already found a replacement for me?" "This is Clara. She cleans my place once a week. She's the cleaner at our hangar. I work so much I don't have time for this. I had to take out an extra mortgage to pay you." "So is there a chance, please, Richard?" I poured myself a cup of tea and took a sip. It was weak, and I should have waited, as Clara had advised. "It's been almost 4 months and I haven't heard a word from you. You're not contesting the divorce, so why now?" She lowered her eyes to her lap in embarrassment. I know I made a terrible mistake. I wanted to give you time. I wanted you to miss me. And I had to be brave. Yeah. Mom said if you loved me, you could give me another chance. Dad said I was wasting my time, but I had to try. Richard, please. I sipped my tea again. Clara walked in with a tray full of cleaning products and headed up the stairs. I'm just going to clean up upstairs. There's nothing in your bedroom that I shouldn't see, is there? She chuckled softly. I hope you've put away all your bondage gear. And with those words, she ran up the stairs without waiting for an answer. I looked at Zoe. This is her little joke. You know we've never allowed ourselves anything like this. Maybe we should have, but you've never wanted to explore anything out of the ordinary except with this jerk. Even the doggy-style pose was a step too far for you. Zoe looked at me. I didn't answer her question. I was still angry with her, but I kept my cool. What did you think? You shocked me by telling me you wanted to spend the weekend with another man. You'd been planning it for weeks and gave me 2 minutes to make a decision, threatening physical violence if I didn't. You came to love the idea of 2 men fighting over you, hoping your lover would win and you could have your weekend of mind-blowing sex, come back, and everything would be back to normal. But that would be the new normal for me, and you think I'd never be as good as your lover? Yes, I was excited when 2 men were about to fight over me, but then I saw you pull out a knife and your air pistol. At that moment, I realized I had made a mistake, and Gerald would never win. I didn't want you to go to jail because I put you in that position. I'm so sorry. Zoe, I loved you with all my heart. You killed that love when you told me you wanted to spend the weekend with him. The last few weeks you've been depressed, a little quiet, and I thought something was wrong. I tried to cheer you up. Now I know why. You were planning on sleeping with that asshole. I had a birthday dinner planned, and I had flowers. I was there for you, but you listened to that asshole. You wouldn't come up and talk to me. You threatened to beat me up, and you made it a fait accompli. How could you do that to someone you said you loved? I will never be able to trust you again. In fact, it hurts me to be around you. She hasn't touched her tea. I think it's time for you to leave, I told her. She got up and headed for the front door. I opened it for her. She looked at me and said, I love you. I'm sorry, but I understand. I threw her another phrase. You remember that girl who told you about Gerald? Yeah, Karen Prescott. Soon to be Karen Jones. Her husband's making her take back her maiden name. She turned and walked away crying. I didn't bother to see where she went. I wondered how Clara was doing upstairs. I walked up the stairs and saw that my bedroom door was open. I walked over to it, unbuttoned my shirt and threw it on the floor. Clara would reprimand me for it later, but I didn't care. I walked into my bedroom and saw Clara lying on my bed, blanket pulled back, wearing black stockings and smiling. I couldn't find your bondage gear. That's because I don't have any. Too bad, I'd love to try it. By this time, I was in just my underwear. I went into the bathroom and took the belt off my robe, and when I got back to the bedroom, I said to Clara, I think this will do. Let's try it. Almost an hour later, Clara was lying on my shoulder. One of her black-stockinged legs was thrown over mine. Raising her eyes to me, she said, I really should be grateful to Zoe, but I can't find it in my heart to thank her for the pain she caused you. It would be like thanking her for hurting you. She smiled. When your divorce becomes final and I move here permanently, we'll have to try that bonding thing again. That was the first I heard of her moving permanently, but I didn't complain. As we were about to fall asleep, I heard Clara say, I want to explore everything Zoe hasn't explored. We fell into a restful sleep.